And what's up, hockey fans, and welcome to episode number 68 of Marty's Illegal Stick, recording here on March 15th, 2022, the Ides of March. Beware the Ides of March. As you can see, if you're watching on the video stream, we're a little short-handed. Dom and Jeremy are not here. No, it wasn't anything to do with the Ides of March. They're okay. But as always, I have my trusty sidekick in his studio because I'm actually home. Dave the Save Warner, what's going on, buddy?
I'm lonely. I'm here alone again. This is 2 podcasts in a row today. I'm just by myself here, staring at an empty chair.
Maybe you should change your deodorant.
There could be that. There could be that. You know, or this time you guys are the ones that are saying you're not feeling that great.
Jeez,
you don't want to get near
right?
me. So, you know.
Oh, hey, we want to preserve you. You know,
well,
we can't.
I'm well preserred for my age.
We can't very well put formaldehyde in you. So,
see, he's already figuring out I provide comic relief.
Yes.
Your guest has figured this out.
That's your job.
Yep.
Oh boy. Well, speaking of our guest, I'm going to bring him right in because I'm really excited to get to this. This guy is the co-host of, and I'm going to tell you right now, this is the best AHL podcast out there for sure. It's called the Calder Farmstead, an AHL podcast. He is the co-host. He is an analytical wizard. Matter of fact, he does more analytical work than I even want to imagine. He is the one. He is the only Mr. Sean O'Brien. Sean, what's going on?
Not too much. March, as an Irishman, is my favorite month of the year. So this is usually when us Irish people are peaking. I feel the same about myself. I'm very much looking forward to the weekend. We are not doing our usual recap preview for this weekend because, well, I am not going to try and pretend like I'm going to watch games while cooking a bunch of Irish food and putting a Guinness into me every 30 minutes or so. Our analysis on Tuesday is going to be some teams played, and we're going to have a fun episode that comes out on Friday about the trade deadline of what a fun AHL trade deadline could look like, where we basically we're going to break down, if we were GMs of AHL teams and we could only make AHL contract hockey trades,
sure,
what would we try and do to, bolster our chances? And we're going to look at, players we'd bring in and kind of look down in the future in the pipeline of these players are probably going to be in the AHL this year from these NHL teams. So that means we should move on from some guys who maybe are useful, but won't fit next year. So that's going to be what we're doing over at the Calder Farmstead. But usually we do preview recaps where we preview the weekend and then we recap the weekend. We dive deep into 4 series a week. We cover the whole league kind of on a rotating basis. So we're one of the few podcasts where we can say we've actually seen all of these teams, all of these players play across the league. Because most people don't get around to all of that. Which, I mean, if you're a fan of just the Utica Comets, which good team to be a fan of this year. But it's challenging to be like, well, what are the San Diego Gulls up to?
Right.
We can help do that a little bit, especially as the Calder Cup playoffs are approaching. There are going to be teams and matchups that people aren't familiar with, and that's where we come in.
Absolutely. And, the last episode you guys just did is a fantastic primer because you guys went through every division talking about the playoff races that are involved. And you're right. As obviously we cover the Comets a lot. We don't see anybody from the Western Conference. They don't play anybody from the Western Conference. So, knock on wood, I'm not trying to jinx anything or anything like that. But if there is a deep run to be made, then there are going to be teams that the Comets have not seen all year long. And it's actually a really good idea to have some working knowledge about that. And we will get into that in a little bit. However, I do want to talk about, of course, the Utica Comets. By the way, I love the background.
Oh,
and the jersey. That's awesome. That is awesome.
He's in costume.
Oh, I mean, we have a running joke on our show about because the first, I think it was 4 episodes that we recorded of the previous kind of iteration before we became in the Calder Farmstead. I was actually in a different location physically for all 4 of them. And then it's just like, you know what, let's just make this a running joke. And that's what it's become, where every episode I am from some place that's an Easter egg to whatever we're talking about or something like that. Or just like, I think if it's someplace that was popular in the news, I think there was one time where like a volcano was going off in Iceland and I had the volcano going off in the background. So
yeah, well, Cece's got it easy because he's always in Denver, right?
Oh yeah, he's always in Denver. It's easy for him.
By the way, CC's the co-host of the Calder Farmstead. But yeah, I mean, and you know what? You were just talking about being an Irishman. This would have been a great weekend for you to be in Utica because they just had the St. Patrick's Day parade. Big party going on all over the city. And even though we got a blizzard, of course, but not really a blizzard, just a snowstorm. I mean,
it's just a snowstorm.
That
it wasn't
a
bad. Come on.
Well, listen, we've been spoiled by a relatively good winter. All right.
Yeah, that's true.
But that notwithstanding, let's talk about those Utica Comets for a second. Comfortably in first place, and they're leading the Eastern Conference as well. I'm going to pull up their record in just a second here. So they're 34-12, 6-0, 74 points with a winning percentage of .712. You were actually on the show. I forgot to mention it. I think it was late November you were on.
That sounds about right.
And I don't think they had lost yet at that point.
I think that was still like they were, I think, about 2 games away from losing their first one. But yeah.
Right.
And we talked about, too, it's like, they're not going to go 72-0 or 70. Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, who's going to expect that, right? Yeah. But, I mean, they haven't done much losing since then. So now that you've had a pretty good look at them, not just the winning streak part of it, but we've had a good 4 months into the season now. What are some of the strengths that you see of this team that kind of separates them from the rest?
I mean, I think the biggest one is, number one, they're well coached, and that hasn't changed at all. They have been like the bump that they have gotten from Kevin Dineen has been huge. And I mean, I knew like Kevin Dineen was one of our best, was on the ballot and one of the finalists for best coach for us last year at our award show in San Diego. And I mean, it's still bizarre to me that that Anaheim was like, yeah, we see all this great work you've done, all these players you've developed. We're going to completely go in a different direction. That's a choice, but it was funny because we're like, yeah, he's going to do better for the Comets than the Devils' previous affiliate coach, Mark Dennehy did, yes. Who I was, I think, probably on the leading the wagon of fire Mark Dennehy. But Kevin Dineen comes in. This entire team has bought in. I mean, he's there, pulling guys out of the pile, fighting at the end of games. Like, that's a coach you go to war for. And it seems like at every instance, he's had that team as prepared as possible. And I mean, that plus they have good scoring depth this year. They look so much improved from last season's Binghamton Devils, where that team was just a tire fire in transition. They could never get the puck out of their own zone. They look a lot like what Lehigh Valley looks like this year, or Cleveland, where it's just they get pinned in their own end for minutes at a time because their defensemen can't, when they get the puck on their stick, are not making good choices, or they're, folding under pressure like an origami crane. And this year, like Kevin Ball, Riley Walsh, Hodachuk, they all look just worlds better at handling pressure, picking up the pace of the game, dealing with the fact that the AHL is a lot faster than what they're used to. Like, they made huge leaps in that, and that's been a big factor for them, especially too because Utica is a team that succeeds primarily through scoring off the rush. They're generating odd man rushes. They're creating havoc when they're even man rushes, 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s, that kind of thing, and that all begins from the back end. That's puck movers like Riley Walsh that are able to get that transition going right away, and that's been what's fueled this team. Also, too, they have a lot to look forward to, I think, if they can get Tice Thompson back healthy. He sounds like, at least from the injury reports I've read here and there, like he's probably going to be back right around playoff time. He'll be in Utica, whereas some of the other Devils guys that are technically eligible, they could, send down to Utica for no cost to them, I don't think make it. Like, Dawson Mercer is technically eligible to be waived without, any problems. He doesn't have to go through waivers. Sure. But if you're the Devils, do you send Dawson Mercer to Utica for the playoffs?
It's a toss-up. That it is, because I mean, you would want to see him get some playoff experience, but on the other hand, what if something happens to him?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. And I can also see where it's like, you played a full season here for us. You did fine. We don't see the need for you to, have any more experience this season. This is a good moment for you to just pack it in and watch. Or they could send him. I could also see the opposite side where it's like, yeah, but you're young and we want you to get a couple more games in. More experience is always better. I think it's a toss-up. I wouldn't count on him if I were a Comets fan, but be happily delighted should he show up. but Tice Thompson will be another big piece. Like that's a guy that can do damage at the AHL level. Having both Dawes and Schmid for what feels like the first time since November would be nice too. Maybe John Gillies, but probably like I don't think, because John Gillies needs waivers, and I would imagine a team at this time would be picking up a goaltender of just, hey, he's a third goaltender we can stash on our playoff roster. Sure. Why not? So I don't think John Gillies would appear, but as long as Dawes and Schmid are healthy, that's probably one of the better goaltending tandems you can ask for at the AHL at this level. So, I mean, anytime you can point at your goaltenders and be like, I believe in that guy, and have two of those guys, that's a huge thing, especially because Merrick Mittens has been, he's been Merrick Mittens, and that's like, he's not a goaltender that I think is capable of being an AHL starter, or at least not yet. Goaltending is basically made up. We always say it's voodoo because it's impossible to predict over both the short and long term. But I think Merrick Mittens has been over his head trying to be a goaltender in the AHL, at least at this point in his career, whereas Dawes and Schmid have come in and looked more or less the parts. I feel like Schmid has, at least in recent starts, let up a couple ones where it's like, oh, it's not a great one, but overall, I still believe in both of them. That's a huge piece. So I think up and down strengths, you can say their scoring depth is a big strength. Their defense's ability to move the puck in transition is a big strength. Their goaltending is a big strength. Those are three big feathers in their cap.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, I will say, for the goaltending, I think Merrick Mittens needed to spend more time in the ECHL just to get, his feet under him. But I will say in his defense, Akira Schmid has appeared in 10 straight games now. He's not playing. I mean, they sent him down to Adirondack last week to get a game in. And as a goaltender, that's very difficult to, especially when you're a young goaltender like that. And you need to get those reps in, and you need to get that game time in to sit there because you can practice all you want, but it's not the same as actual game time, And Nico Dawes has been a revelation for New Jersey. So, I mean, we were actually thinking here in Utica that, New Jersey might actually trade for another goaltender just to get Dawes back down to get him some playing time. But the way he's playing up there now, I mean, it's hard to believe that this is his first pro season.
Yeah, and it's one thing, too, where you see a lot of goaltenders in their rookie years have more success than their sophomore years because shooters don't have the book on them yet. They don't have a lot of film to study from them. They're basically an unknown. And like you would think as an NHL player, I'm like, well, how big of an advantage could that be? Really, really big. Because you'll notice a lot of rookie goaltenders who have sensational first years, they come back to earth a little bit in the second year because shooters have a bigger book on them. They know what they have more film to study, more what to expect. Right. And when you're an NHL player, that's a big difference. It's like you've seen Jordan Binnington come down to earth this year, despite the fact that I still think he's a pretty decent goalie. You're probably going to see that more as time goes on with Dawes and Schmid too. And you've seen it from goalies who maybe aren't necessarily rookies, but they're not NHL regulars and they get called up and they perform well because some of it, A, goaltending is just made up as it is. And B, that you don't have shooters that know what they're looking for in them. So like, I remember when JF Berube went up for Columbus from Cleveland. And he, blanked 3 good NHL teams in 3 straight nights and cost me a bunch of money. Thanks, JF. Because he like shooters straight up just didn't have the knowledge of what his tendencies are, where to go on him. And yeah, the fact that he hasn't been good in the AHL this year for a 3-game stretch didn't matter at all because goaltending is made up. But
it's true though. It really is. And you mentioned like Jordan Binnington. Think Matt Murray. I mean,
Matt Murray
2 Stanley Cups, ended up in Belleville this season, right? I mean, that's just. But looking at the Comets, no team is perfect, of course. So the weaknesses of this team, what do you think they could be?
One of them is the bottom of the defense. I think they have a handedness problem a little bit. So basically, as constructed or as the roster has been kind of rolling out recently, one of Kevin Ball or Grolu or Wotherspoon is playing on their offhand side 5-on-5. And while that sounds like a tiny little nitpick thing, that actually does change some of the way things are played. Because if you're a right-handed player playing on the left side, that means if you're in the neutral zone and you want to make that D-to-D pass, that means you're either making it from your backhand across the ice or you're catching it on your backhand. And there is no player in professional hockey that feels as comfortable catching passes or making passes backhand as they do on their forehand. Same thing, fielding pucks off the boards. If you're on your offside, you're fielding pucks off the boards on your backhand. If you're, catching a rim around that's coming into the zone or a dump in, you're doing it on your backhand. If you're in the offensive zone, the puck comes up to you, you can't just fire it right away. You're on your backhand. You have to pull it to your forehand. If you want to try and go D to D there, same thing we talked about. And not to mention too, I like the strides that Kevin Ball's made as a defensive defenseman. He's shown a little bit of upside offensively at moments. I'm not a huge fan of Jeremy Grollo. I downright have not liked Tyler Wotherspoon in the film that I've watched from him. I remember saying earlier, he looked like a player who was actively trying to play himself off the Olympic roster for the handful of games I watched when it was right before he went. I was like, Jesus. Like, I remember hitting the pause button watching film and just going, what were you doing there? And like, yeah, there's mistakes in moments, but like they were moments that got exploited for goals. And the fact that I think handedness comes into it, that would be something I would point to. Again, I've liked Schmid on the season. I like Dawes on the season, but there have definitely been moments recently with Schmid where it looks like he's had, mental lapses. One of the goals, I think it was Jimmy Schultz that scored for Rochester recently.
The other night, right.
Beat him cleanly 5-hole on a shot from the outside from distance. Like, yeah, those will go in once in a while, but I feel like the last 3 or 4 games, that starting 10 in a row is starting to get to him. And he's had a couple of those just momentary lapses where he gets beat with one where you look at it and you're like, yeah, every goaltender wants every goal back every time. But that one you don't feel good about. So while I don't think a weakness, I definitely think they need Dawes back, if nothing else, to take some of these starts from him. Because, yeah, they played him 10 in a row, but I think more of that is they don't trust Mittens or they don't trust any of the other goaltenders currently in Utica. So they're just running Schmid, not into the ground per se, but running him a little ragged. There's also I don't hate some of their bottom line guys. Every fourth line in the AHL is going to be compromised of guys. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not thrilled with him. Their fourth line, I think, is better than most, but there are still times in which I watch some of their fourth line or their bottom 6 play. And I'm like, yeah, it's not ideal. And hopefully, when Tyce Thompson gets healthy and comes to Utica, that will help shift some guys down a little bit. But there are definitely, I think they could use another right-handed defenseman. I think Tyce Thompson should help kind of shift the roster in a way that's good. But if I were them, I'd be trying to find a right-handed defenseman. But that's finding right-handed capable defensemen in professional hockey is something every team is doing at every moment. Because for whatever reason, right-handed defensemen just don't grow on trees.
They're the holy grail.
It really is. I'm a right-handed defenseman. So for me, it seems weird that I am the most in-demand position being, a lower D beer league player. But at the same point, it is weird that most defensemen, it seems are left-handed, and finding quality right-handed ones is a challenge. But it's definitely something I would be looking for, that balance for them, as well as just some maybe not better fourth line or bottom 6 players, but ones that have a slightly different skill set.
Sure. And you know what? Speaking of defense, when you talked about Kevin Ball earlier, did you know that he has his own fan club here?
Oh, I have loved.
He didn't see it, Scott. He didn't see it. You got to stand up longer.
Oh no. I've very much been aware. I watched your episode where you had the Balls Army guys on. That is absolutely fantastic, and you could hear them on broadcast.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's fantastic. I love it. I'm a big proponent of teams needing to do more to build fan culture, and the fact that they are having such a great time with that, and it's hilarious. I think it's a huge thing for Utica, and they should embrace it. Because a lot of teams, it feels like, just have their chants are "Go Team Go."
Right.
They all kind of have the same merch where it's just a logo slapped on a shirt or a hat or whatever. So the fact that this feels like something that is just a Utica thing, I love it. I'm all about it. I'm not saying that we're gonna get shirts, but if they make a good Calder Cup run, I could definitely see me buying one.
Beautiful. And it's funny too, because my family and I, we have season tickets. And you can always tell when there's somebody new who hasn't either been to a game all year or hasn't been in a while, because when they start that, they all kind of look like, what did they just say? It's great. I love it. So let's talk some analytics here, because you, my friend, are the master of analytics as far as not only the AHL, but you're doing ECHL, you're doing the SPHL, which we talked about a couple episodes ago. That's a really fun league. From an analytics standpoint, how are the Comets looking?
For the most part, really good. I mean, analytics are always supposed to be a supplement to the eye test. There is a person way smarter than me, Rachel Dory, has said, analytics are salad. The analytics are the lettuce. Your eye test is your salad dressing. All of your X factors are the croutons, the cherry tomatoes, that kind of thing. It all goes together, because if you came over to someone's place and they're just eating raw lettuce, you'd think they were a nut job. Or if they're just chugging ranch dressing, that's someone's place you're never going to go to again. All of it goes together. Otherwise, it looks incoherent. So the fact that the eye test says that the Comets are doing well, the analytics support that. They have gotten a lot of good puck luck throughout the season. And I remember that was one of the things we talked about the last time I was here in November, when they're, 13-0, 14-0 and stuff. It's like, yeah, they've also gotten really good puck luck. Now, they're a very good team, and when good teams get good puck luck, they look like world beaters, and that's mostly what the Comets have looked like this year. My only concern would be that a lot of times you see these teams go on puck luck benders, and then once the playoffs hit, suddenly that's when it all comes crashing down. We talked about Henderson last year, that Henderson was on a huge puck luck bender the whole year. And then when it seemed like they needed it the most in, the pretend Pacific Division playoffs that nobody asked for, that was when all of a sudden it was like, oh, yeah, where's that puck luck we had, throughout the regular season? And like, there have been a lot of instances like that you can point to throughout professional hockey, where it's like teams that are riding good puck luck, even if they're good teams, when it comes to the playoffs, that seems to be the moment in which it runs out. And then that's how your, regular season champion flames out in the second round. Not saying that's going to be the Comets or anything like that.
No, totally understood.
That is definitely a moment in which I would look at and be like, they have really good underlying numbers. A lot of the, analytics that I have support the fact that the Comets are really good, but you'll see a lot of moments in like the standings projections that I do, where it has the team power grade and the Comets are like a lot lower than you would think, but that's because it corrects for puck luck. So it basically takes the team strength and then regresses it back based on puck luck to a reasonable level. And then the team grade is based on that. So there are some moments in which it's like, yeah, the Comets are favored to win the Central by this big margin, but their team power grade is a C. That doesn't track. Well, they also have a lot of puck luck to be regressed from, because they've been having good puck luck all season. But you see good teams that have a lot of talent also tend to have good puck luck compared to bad teams, because, well, they're more talented. And there's some of that to work into. But I mean, everything that I'm seeing from them, their forwards are playing well. Their puck luck has been decent. Their special teams look good. Like, all of the numbers back up that, yeah, stuff that we know. Utica is very good.
Yeah. I mean, and you know what? We're going to put underneath the banner there where we can find your analytic work, because it's fantastic. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, like, I'm old school, so it really takes me a while to try to figure it all out. And plus, I wasn't that good in math in school either, so that didn't help. So to me, the biggest bit of analytics was plus minus, which I know is an antiquated stat. The analytics community hates that stat, I know. But and you know what? You have a Calder Farmstead episode that basically explains analytics, correct?
Yeah, it's our episode 0. And we always tell people at the beginning of the episodes, as part of our kind of intro is, if you're new to us, you should go check out episode 0. Anywhere our podcast can be found, on YouTube, anything like that. You scroll all the way to the bottom there through, I think we've done like 90 episodes now, which is an insane number. Every time we finish an episode and I have to type in the new number for our new like YouTube thumbnail, I'm like, I say to Cece, I'm like, can you believe we've done this many of these already? But yeah, if you go all the way to the beginning, it's episode 0. And you could tell it is our first episode because I don't have a fancy background. And this was before I got married. So I didn't have like the shoulder length. I had the shoulder length hair and a full beard. And then that's kind of waxed and waned as time's gone on. But yeah, we talk about everything that, goes into like all of the analytics you see on my page. as well as like some other aspects, as well as, what we think of as being important on the ice that's based in analytics. So like carrying the puck into the offensive zone instead of playing dump and chase leads to better results, or shooting from, not shooting from the points and hoping for tips and rebounds and stuff is not as effective, whereas trying to shoot from the home plate area and the inner slot is a much better choice. And we talk about why plus minus is bad in there and why goals against average isn't that useful and stuff like that. So, and why one of my biggest bones that I pick all the time is that faceoffs are not that important, which catches a lot of people by surprise because they're like, oh yeah, he's winning 58% of faceoffs. That's super. It's really not that valuable.
That's great. But I mean, just as a very, very brief overview. So like the Corsi stat is more or less like a possession.
Yep.
Kind of
sure. So Corsi basically measures shot attempts. So not just shots that go on goal, but shots that miss the net or shots that get blocked. And it's kind of as you said, it's a proxy for possession because you have to possess the puck in the offensive zone to shoot it, more or less. I mean, you could take a shot from the neutral zone, but really nobody does that. So it's a measure of possession. And when tracked against actual possession of the puck, it comes out to be a very good proxy. So it's not a perfect measure, but it's still very, very good. And possession, teams that win that possession battle, that have an over 50 Corsi percentage for the game, win the game like 2/3 of the time. So possession, a very important thing in most games. And even though like you'll hear coaches that don't like analytics still say the same things that analytics wants. They're like, we need to shoot more. We need to be in the offensive zone more. Well, that's what Corsi measures. That's the whole point of it. But you'll see a lot of Corsi stats. I personally don't have Corsi because I don't have access to that kind of data, which is unfortunate, but that's what the AHL gives me. A lot of my analytics are making lemonade out of the lemons I'm given. So you'll see those at the NHL level, or if you have someone who has access to Instat. Instat tracks all of that stuff, but you have to pay them a bunch of money for it. So I don't do that.
You can go on yours for free and save yourself a lot of money and get just the same information.
You can. They're like having Corsi data or expected goals for data much better, but not. What I try and give you is at least similar. They're a finer sword than what I wield, but still we cut pretty much the same-ish. So I'm not too willing to shell out the big bucks for it. But yeah, Corsi, a good proxy for possession. Fenwick is basically the same thing as Corsi. The only difference is with Fenwick, it takes out blocked shots. Because Fenwick views blocked shots as a skill and Corsi doesn't. And they both, measure possession similarly, but not quite the same. I think Corsi is fine. I don't really use Fenwick that much, but I see the value in it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know it or not, but I do another podcast called the Hockey Royalty Podcast. It's an LA Kings based podcast. And the guys I do that one with, Ryan Sykes and Russell Morgan, they're constantly talking about analytics. So I drive them crazy because I'm like the guy in the back who doesn't understand what they're talking about. So they're talking about expected goals for, and I'm like, is that good? Is that good? Yes, it's good.
Basically, anytime
they laugh every time I talk about it.
Oh yeah. Basically, anytime you see like something like a Corsi 4 percentage or a Fenwick 4 or an expected goals 4, anytime you see that 4 percentage, you want to be over 50 because that means your side is gaining more of the shots than the opponent. But as long as you're at 50 or over in as many of them as you can, you're usually on the right side of play. Where you get under, there are some cases where it's okay that you can be under a little bit. Like Alex Ovechkin is under 50% Corsi and under 50% expected goals most of the time. But he gets to do that because he's Alex Ovechkin and his shots coming from his stick are better or higher quality. So he can get away with having worse possession metrics because his pucks go in more often. So there is some of that kind of gives you context, but for the most part, being over 50% is what you're shooting for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, if you don't understand analytics or you want to learn more about it, that Calder Farmcast episode 0 is excellent. Yeah. So
it's only 20 minutes too. And that's also one of our running jokes in the show is, I mean, I think the one from last week was, or one of the ones from the previous weeks was, yeah, you wasted 20 minutes watching college basketball. It's not March Madness yet. Nobody cares.
Right.
Next time, take that 20 minutes you spent watching pre-March Madness games and come watch our episode 0 and learn something about hockey.
Absolutely.
Hey, Sean,
Absolutely.
Barry Shelley wants to know what your feeling is about the San Jose Barracuda this year.
I mean, I don't think they're making the playoffs. So there's that. They have like their power play. It's amazing watching the Barracuda's power play compared to the rest of their 5-on-5 play. Their power play is smooth. It runs so efficiently. I have no idea which assistant coach on the Barracuda is in charge of it, but that guy deserves all of the money that they give him and more. And then you watch the team 5-on-5 and it's just like, how are these the same teams? Like their power play runs so efficiently, runs so smoothly. But their biggest problem has been too, like the Sharks have taken a lot of their good defensemen. They've been banged up a lot. So they have like 4 ECHLers who do not belong in the AHL at the bottom of that depth chart on defense. And that's what's killing them. Kind of like we talked about earlier with how Utica moves the puck so well out of their own end. Their defense pick up a rebound or pick up a dump and immediately it's going the other way. That's something that San Jose hasn't been able to do this year because of that bottom of their defensive pairing are just a running train of mistakes when it comes to, fielding a dump in off the wall cleanly, making that good first pass, reading pressure. They're like teams will play dump and chase against the Barracuda. Their defenseman will go to pick up the puck and it'll take them 4 seconds to field the puck, look up and try and make a first pass. And in professional hockey, you do not have 4 seconds with the puck on your stick ever. So no. You can't be screwing around with that kind of time, but that's what's happening to San Jose. I think that they have talented players, but the fact that the bottom of their defense right now are guys that just cannot move the puck out of their own zone is what kills them. Like their goaltending looks bad on paper. Believe me, I see the graphs where their goaltenders are basically forcing my graph to stretch left more because of how bad they are.
You got to go into panoramic view.
Oh yeah. But I think that's one of the things that I love about my goaltending graph is it has a measure of defensive environment because you can't separate goalies from the team that plays in front of them. And yeah, their goalies haven't performed well, but their defensive environment in front of them is awful because they turn pucks over so often in the defensive zone that like the other teams are just pinning them in, getting shots, getting scoring chances because the team in front of Melnichuk and Sawchenko and all of the goalies they have. Like, I feel bad for Alex Stalock when he eventually gets to the CUDA because he's just going to get murdered there too. And I think they are a better team than what they've been this season when they're at full strength. I also think they need a new coach. I think Roy Sommer has long since overstayed his welcome as a useful AHL coach. And I've said that a lot of times when we talk about the Barracuda. Like, it seems like at this point, he's just a coach, kind of like a professor at a university that has tenure, where like he can show up to class, kind of put his feet on the desk and just ramble nonsense for 60 minutes and he won't get fired because he has tenure. Roy Sommer, well, not that bad, definitely has lost the advantage that he would have in coaching that he had in previous years. He hasn't developed anyone to San Jose in meaningful minutes in like 4 years. That team has not looked good on the ice in years. I think it's time for Roy Sommer, the AHL's quote unquote winningest coach, to maybe, take a retirement or, go strictly to a player development role if that's what he wants to do. But they need new blood behind the bench there. I think that's going to help them a lot.
Yeah. And, I wanted to kind of shift gears and talk about the AHL North. So take the Comets out of the equation because, again, knock on wood, and I'm not trying to pump tires here, it doesn't look like they're going to get caught in that division.
No, there's no way.
But if you look at the rest of that division, I'm looking at the standings right now. You got, and everybody has to keep in mind you have to go by points percentage because of the way the playoffs are set up. But you got Toronto in second place with a 560 points percentage. Belleville's in third place with 550, which, by the way, we're recording right now as we speak. A Comets game is going on, and the Comets are down 2-0 with about 9 minutes left in the second period to Belleville. So, anyways, Laval 550, fourth place. Rochester 544, Syracuse 537. Cleveland's starting to fall out of it a little bit at 481. Maybe you can get a hot streak going and they can get back into things. However, with the way the playoffs are set up for the North Division, so 5 teams are going to make it out of that division. I believe there's 3 buys, right?
Yeah. So 4 plays 5 right away.
Right.
And then the winner of that goes to play the first seed, and 2 and 3 play.
Right. So, I mean, this is a bitter fight till the end. And, we were talking about this at the Comets game the other night. So, the Comets are up. Nobody's going to catch them.
Nobody's catching them.
Don't forget, I mean, they're still playing a lot of games against their division rivals. And these guys are fighting for their playoff lives, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to see the most intense play you're going to see out of them. So what I want to know is, out of that division, who do you think, what teams would give the Comets the biggest fits come playoff time?
Honestly, the team that I think would give the Comets trouble is going to do 4 things. Number 1, they're going to forecheck well. They're going to control the neutral zone, because the Comets, like we talked about, are a team that thrives on rush chances. They're looking to generate counterattacks. They're looking to get 3-on-2s, spring guys for breakaways. They're looking to fly through the neutral zone. And teams that have had some success against the Comets are teams that are able to keep that in check, to not get caught deep forechecking, to control the play of the neutral zone. So you want a team that's going to do that. You want a team that has scoring depth, because you're going to need to be able to not count on your just top line to go out there and score every night. You're going to need a team that has good goaltending, or at least a goaltender I believe could do the job in a pinch. Like,
right,
the best goaltenders aren't always the hottest ones. So you at least need someone who I could point to and be like, yeah, if he got hot, they could definitely do it. You need someone who's a good penalty kill, because the Comets are murdering people on the power play, especially when they have Holtz on the sidewall. I think that team could be Belleville. They've shown they can shut down the neutral zone and forecheck well. I've seen them do it against Toronto. I've seen them do it against Rochester, albeit a weaker Rochester roster recently. They also have good scoring depth. Mark Kastelik is their 3rd-line center. He has 11 goals on the season. Cole Reinhardt, frequently a bottom 6 guy, has 10 goals. Matthew Wedman's a regular in the bottom 6 for Belleville. He has 9 goals on the year. Not to mention Angus Crookshank might make it back in time for playoffs. Parker Kelly is probably coming back from Ottawa. Maybe Eric Brandstrom. Maybe Alex Fermenton too come back from Ottawa.
Sure.
And that's going to give them a lot of scoring depth. And while their goaltending doesn't have someone I can point to and be like, that's a guy you got to worry about, I think Mads Sogard's been okay. Philip Gustafsson has been okay. Both of them are guys that I could believe, if they got hot, could carry that team. I also think that the Senators' penalty kill has been pretty good this year. They're 5th in the raw penalty kill percentage in the AHL. And in net, let me pull it up from my site here, according to data from last Thursday. So not the freshest, but still something important to mention. Belleville in net power play, or net penalty kill, is 10th in the league at 86.3%. So a good penalty kill, a team that's capable of forechecking well, has scoring depth, and at least has a goaltender I can point to and squint my eyes and believe at. I think Belleville could be that team that's going to give Utica some problems. On the other side of things, if there was a team I'd looked at in the North Division, be like, if I were Utica, like, please line them up for us. That's the Marlies.
Ooh, interesting.
I think the Maple Leafs are going to snipe anything that isn't nailed down from the Marlies when they go to the playoffs, because, man, if the Maple Leafs get bounced in a first round again, that city will burn the arena. Yeah. So anybody that isn't nailed down for the Marlies, the Leafs are going to be, having as black aces or having in the building. I also think too and the Marlies have not been the most consistent team this season. They're one that I feel like when we do picks at the end of our show, I pick to win most games, and their roster looks good on paper, but then they have games where they show up and it's like, what are you guys? This is not like, they have a lot of just kind of fluky games where it seems like all of them just agreed, yeah, we're actually going to go to the bar before the game. So, not to mention too, the Maple Leafs themselves have a long history of first round exits. So should they do another early exit this year, that means the Marlies will be loaded again when that happens. And I don't want to play the Marlies then when everyone is back on their side of the building. I want to play them in, they've been picked clean by the Maple Leafs. So if I'm Utica, like, there's no way they can, influence the 3rd seed and 4th seed and so on and so forth.
Right.
But like, I would be crossing my fingers for the Marlies to find their way to me in the first round if I'm Utica, because
that's interesting.
I don't believe in Laval that much either, but Kevin Poulin is playing way above his pay grade right now. And anytime you use the words hot goaltender,
Yeah.
Everyone in the playoffs is like, no, what? No part of hot goaltender guy.
Right.
Kevin Poulin is like, I think he's a perfectly capable AHL goaltender, but right now he's playing like the best goalie they've seen since Carey Price played in Laval all those years ago. Or sorry, played in Hamilton, I think it was. Like, he's been absolutely on fire for them and carrying them to their spot. I don't think the rest of Laval's roster is terribly good, but when you have good goaltending, that can cover for a lot of sins. And right now, that's what Laval is kind of powering themselves through with. So I think the Comets are probably a better team than Laval, but I think Laval certainly has a chance to hot goalie them way into a series they don't want to be in. Whereas I think they could take down the Marlies in the right spot without Toronto, without the Maple Leafs, pulling everybody up. I think that's a good look for them. I think Belleville's not the matchup they want. I would, of anyone that is left, like I'd take Rochester too, because Rochester's a team that wants to play track meets. They're a team that hasn't had solid defense or solid goaltending, even when they've had everyone in town and are at the peak of their powers. Like, I'm looking to duck Belleville and then Laval in that order. And then everyone else, I'm like, sure, whoever else you got, we'll take.
Yeah, but I love to say Rochester's goalie's name, Utica Comets.
Oh yeah,
love it.
So we have a nickname for him on our show. We call him Rifle.
Yeah,
which
good.
I know.
I remember that episode.
Yeah, it's a strange nickname for a goaltender, but our reasoning is, so when Finland won its independence, their standard issue rifle was nicknamed the Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. It was nicknamed after the president of Finland at the time, who helped them gain their independence, who Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is named for. So it kind of becomes this full circle nickname. So that's why we call him Rifle.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
That was a long road.
Yeah. Just don't try to say it 5 times fast.
I'm not saying it once.
Yeah, right. Well, especially on Wednesday night, $3 beer night at the Bank Center. Oh boy! So looking forward, not only the North Division, but say the Eastern Conference. Okay, let's just look at the Atlantic. What are some of the teams coming out of there that you could possibly be the dark horse and trip everybody up?
I think Providence and Springfield are both getting their acts together at the right time. Like, they're teams that top to bottom are very solid, but they've had kind of these weird games where I feel like I've watched Providence in some games and it's like, oh yeah, that's a murder team right there. Like, they're going to be a problem for anyone. And then they'll play games where it's like I said, it looked like with the Marlies, where it's like, yeah, we all went to the bar before the game. We had a good time. Like, Springfield, less so. I feel like Springfield has mostly been because the Blues have been, pulling guys from them at every opportunity. Right. But like, Providence has been a team that seems like they've had most of their roster for the entire season, give or take. And it seems like they've just had kind of weird, fluky stretches where they'll play like 4 games where they go 1-3, and the games they lose, you're just like, what were you guys doing? And then they'll win 5 in a row, and it's like, oh, never mind. Let's forget about that. Right. But like, they both seem like they're getting their acts together as the regular seasons come to a close, and are teams that in general, I'm not, jumping at the bit to play for. I think Hartford is another one that it seems like they're a team that's struggled to have roster consistency. And given the way the Rangers are this year, it looks like they're going to lose at least someone that they need for that team at the deadline. Right. Like, Zach Jones is looking like a tasty trade piece at this moment in time. Should they survive with that roster intact, I think Hartford could do something. If Keith Kincaid can get his act together, he has not been good recently and has visibly looked off in those games. It hasn't just been kind of a, oh yeah, but he's playing all these games, he'll be fine. Like, I don't have worries. The games I've watched from Kincaid recently, I have been concerned. Like, he has looked genuinely off. And I am by no means a goalie whisperer. I've had to work hard to learn anything about goaltending that I have because I'm not a goalie. So when I see that he's looking off, I think that sends bigger alarm bells than it should for someone who's more goalie attuned. I think Huska's been good too, who's been the Wolfpack's other goaltender. But of all the goalie tandems in the Atlantic, those are the 2 I trust the least. Charlotte's another one that I think is a bit under the radar. I think they can go on a run if they're able to hold on to Spencer Knights, because Florida has been bouncing down and all around. If they can keep Owen Tippett on that roster too, that kid is a weapon. I understand why he hasn't made it in Florida, because Florida's loaded, but he also doesn't fit Florida's timeline for contention. So I could see him getting moved at the deadline. If Charlotte doesn't get to keep him, that's going to be a big, hole to fill. But if Charlotte can keep both Owen Tippett and Spencer Knight on their roster for the playoffs, good luck, everyone else.
Right.
But I don't think Hershey has had probably has been one of the teams in the AHL this year that's had the worst injury luck. Brian Pino just went out for the season. Matt Molson, their captain's been out for the season since I want to say November with back surgery. I think it's a good chance we don't see Matt Molson again. I think he's probably going to retire after this one, but
it's too bad. Great guy.
Oh yeah. Great guy. But he's no longer a spring chicken. And he definitely this year has looked more his age than he has in previous years. Plus I'm sure back surgery and recovering and getting back into shape is not going to be fun.
Right.
And Hershey too is just the Capitals have been beaten up all season, and the Capitals are clearly going to the playoffs. I don't think they make any trade deadline moves, but what they're leaving in Hershey is not pretty.
Right. Yeah, because they're probably going to bring up, I would say McMichael, I think, is up there right now.
McMichael's been there the entire season.
Yeah, so he's not coming back down.
No.
Joe Snively, he had a brief run with the Caps. But I'll tell you, Zach Fucal, he looked pretty good when he played the Comets a couple weeks ago.
He's been one too that he had some struggles early in the season, and I think it was because of how hard the Capitals yo-yoed him. So they brought him up for a game. They brought him up, and he hasn't played an NHL game before this season. He was a second round pick, set records in juniors, was a big deal when he got drafted, and then just never turned that into the goaltender that the Canadians thought they were getting or that other teams thought they were getting. The Caps gave him a shot in goal. He pitched a shutout, or he went in relief of, I want to say, Vanacek in one game, stopped 8 shots in the third period. Not a big deal. Starts the next game, pitches a shutout. He literally then becomes the goaltender to start his NHL career with the longest shutout streak in NHL history. The Caps send him down 2 days later.
Yeah.
They call him back up.
Thanks.
He plays 2 very good periods against, I want to say, Minnesota, lets in 2 goals in the third. They lose in a shootout. Still a good performance. That's not on him. The Caps send him back the next day. And at some point, for a dude that has had the journey that he has to the NHL, to have all of that success, get that big monkey off your back, and then to end up back in Hershey like it meant nothing, that messes with your head. He's also a new father. And, if I've learned anything about talking with my friends with kids, newborns are miniature terrorists. They're going to keep you from sleeping for months. And if there's anything that I've learned from watching goaltenders, it takes an incredible amount of focus that you need 8 or 9 or 10 hours of sleep to do at a professional level. And if you have a newborn kid at home, you ain't
forget it.
You're not even getting half of that.
No doubt.
But,
no doubt about it.
So he struggled a little bit, and Bears fans very much called for his, they were like, he should get benched. He needs to sort out whatever's going on with him. And I'm like, no, you can't bench Zach Fucale, because then you're basically saying a dude who's probably down on himself right now, you're going to rip whatever confidence he has left straight away from him. He needs to play and figure out whatever's going wrong. He needs to sort through on the ice. And that's what the Bears did. And then he pitched 3 straight shutouts. So somebody was right there. But
who's that?
Yeah. But he's been one that in the best of times, I absolutely believe in Zach Fucale, but I understand too, goaltending is a hard position, is an impossible position to predict. So is he the guy that can carry them through a playoff round? In 3 games, anything can happen, but I don't think the Bears have the talent up front at this point on the roster. If you showed me that their, roster from game 1 of this season was what's going to be in the playoffs, no, the Bears are talented. They could go on a run. That ain't what's in town right now.
Right.
I don't think it's what's going to be in town, but Fucale might be able to steal them a first round, but I don't think he's going to be able to carry them much further than that.
No, yeah, maybe not. But I will say too, just going back to Providence real quick, that team is gigantic. Last time they were in Utica, we thought that WWE was in town and nobody knew it, because it's just a huge team. Let's talk about the Western Conference again for just a second. Couple things first. Just some of the teams that you think, looking at those standings, that Pacific Division looks like it's loaded. And is there a big difference in the style of play of the 2 conferences? And the reason I ask that, if you look at the top 20 point scorers for the AHL, the list, the top 15 are all from the Western Conference. So is it more of a run and gun conference as opposed to a more defensive minded in the East, or is it just coincidence?
I think some of it is the difference is the balance in goaltending versus shooters. I think the separation between goaltending talent at the top of the Pacific Division from the bottom or from the West in general is very, very big. Like Stockton has great goaltending. Ontario has not have great goaltending, but has managed to produce a facsimile of league average goaltending. Whereas like Abbotsford has had struggles in net, but Spencer Martin's played well recently. Whereas like the Barracuda have had no defense and their goaltending has been terrible. They've been a sieve all year. Same with Tucson. San Diego has had goaltending problems, even though I think Dostal is a very good goaltender. He has had struggles this year. I think when you look at the Central too, like Manitoba's had a great defensive team in front of them. Chicago has a great defensive team in front of them. So they've been able to put up good goaltending numbers, but the bottom of that division, Cleveland has been at times atrocious in net. The same could be said too for a lot of the other teams at the bottom of the Central. So I think that's why you see so many of the scorers be from out West that are filling out that top group, is because it's not necessarily a style of play. I don't think. I think the West is maybe a little more physical and has a little bit more like run and gun to it, but not to an extent where it's like night and day watching conferences. But I think it's more about the division of like in the East, it seems like at least every team has a goalie that you can squint at and be like, okay, he's fine.
Sure.
Whereas out West, like, nope, not every team got that. Like I watch Cleveland. It's like Jet Greaves has had good games, but he's been better recently, but like Tarasov has not been good for them. Berube has not been good for them.
Right.
They've had Cam Johnson in net. That's been a disaster. Iowa had good goaltending to start the season and then decided it needed to play Hunter Jones, which that's a nope. So like I think that's more of why you see kind of the Pacific Division, and not to mention they have good shooters over in that division.
Right.
So I think it's somewhat a little style of play, but I think it's more goaltending heavy. In terms of playoff teams, though, I mean, I don't think I have to tell anyone who hasn't seen the standings. Stockton's a wagon. That team is very, very good. Ontario, also very good, but a lot more like Ontario is a team that wants to get into track meets, and they're not scared to win 7-5, 6-4. Like, and it's worked for them. Whereas
the 80s called, they want their game back.
Oh yeah. Stockton, I feel like can play that and occasionally does get into track meets like that. But you can tell Mitch Love, their coach, does not want to make that a regular occurrence. Like he's fine, maybe trading some chances here and there, you know, in the second period or whatever, but he would much rather control the flow of the play and play a more 3-2 style game. Whereas like Chicago, also another team that's like, we'll play track meets with you if you want. They have the talent for it. And It seems like Warsofsky is okay-ish with that. Whereas a lot of other coaches are very much don't want to do track meet style things. If Chicago can get goaltending to be a little more consistent, Alex Lyon has played, I think, 6 games for them since the new year. And the guys that have replaced him in Jack LaFontaine and the Russian kid's name that just came over, whose name I don't think I can pronounce off the top of my head.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at the Russian kid. And
he's been good, but not excellent. And if they can get Alex Lyon back as their one solid goaltender for the playoffs, they should be fine. But I wouldn't shock me to see them make moves for another goaltender. The Moose, I think, are a tricky one in the Central. That's a team that, like, their defensive core is probably the best in the league. Their top 4 defensemen are amazing. They're all borderline NHL caliber. I like their goaltending too, but in Mikhail Burden, but they've been picked clean on the offensive front. And that's where they've been struggling a lot. Like, they just got David Gustafsson back, like, I think 2 weeks ago. He's one of their big offensive players. Cole Perfetti and Reichel are on LTIR for the Winnipeg Jets. So it doesn't look likely that they're going to get those 2 back, which would have been huge pieces for a Moose playoff run. A lot of the other guys that are in Winnipeg that could be or have been on the Moose this year, I believe need waivers to clear. So that's uncertain if they come back. Guys like Dominic Toninato, Evgeny Svechnikov, both are, would be huge assets to the Moose for their scoring depth right now, but they're getting them back is going to be questionable. If they do get them back, I think the Moose can take down Chicago and win the Central at least and go on to challenge one of Stockton and or Ontario. But without them, I don't think that's going to be a team that goes as far. The Admirals have all of the pieces in theory, but they are a team where, kind of like we talked about with the Marlies, they have a lot of bar nights on that team on the defensive side where like we talked about Matt Donovan earlier on our show. And it was like, Matt Donovan makes 4 or 5 plays a game for them where I'm just like, that's a very talented player. And then he makes 2 or 3 every game where I just look at him like, what are you doing, baby? No. And it's never like he never plays one game where it's like that was a mistake-free game for Matt Donovan. He's very good. He deserves to be like one of their top 4 defensemen, but him and a couple of the other guys on that team, every like one a period, they're good for a mistake where you're just like, what did you do? What were you even thinking of doing there? A lot of the rest of the kind of contenders around the West for me are goaltending dependents. The Eagles and Silver Knights stand out to me. Like Eustace Noonan for Colorado has been solid for a rookie and for his first year in North America. I think he's done a good job from a prospect aspect. Like if I'm the Avalanche looking at him, I'm happy with how he's played. If I'm someone who's thinking that he could carry me to a Calder Cup or at least backstop me to a Calder Cup, I mean, maybe I could squint and see it, but he's not someone I would be, jumping up and down if that's my starting goaltender. If he can, if he can get hot, the Eagles have the rest of the pieces in place to be good. They're a team that moves the puck very, very well, unless it's on the power play. Their power play puck movement is atrocious for some reason, and none of us can really figure out why it's as bad as it is. Like I can point to moments in which they're going wrong, but it doesn't seem like they're any closer to solving it now than they were in November.
Right.
Same with Henderson. Like, does Logan Thompson come back to Henderson and, champion them to a playoff run? Right. If that's the case, I think they're probably a much better team than they are right now because the rest of that roster is very good. But Logan Thompson has started 7 games in 2022 for the Silver Knights. And that's it, because he's been reasonably good for the Golden Knights, and he's looked the part of a competent NHL backup, especially with Lehner hurt and Laurent Bressant being,
Laurent
Bressant. Yeah. So the fact that like the Silver Knights have managed to make lemonade with Jiri Patera and Dylan Ferguson are fine, but like those are not guys I believe in for the playoffs. And if it's not Logan Thompson in the net for Henderson for the playoffs, I don't think they really go anywhere. Same thing with Abbotsford. Like for a handful of games when they've been at full strength with that roster, with everyone back from Vancouver, their goaltending sorted out, they've looked damn good. If they get that roster for the playoffs, I think they can go places. Maybe they can pull off an upset of Stockton or Ontario. If they have everyone in town and a goaltender that's doing the things, they can make a run. But without that, the rest of they're like first call up. Their 13th forward, 7th defenseman are not doing the things they need to be by and large. Like they're young kids that I think could grow into those roles and have moments where they look good. But for a 7-game series, they're the team I think that if they have everything is scary, but if they're one piece short,
yeah. And you know what's really interesting too is if you look at the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, a lot of the top teams in the Western Conference, their NHL parent clubs are also contending. So there's that danger that, some of those top players in the AHL could be moved at Monday's trade deadline in the NHL just for trying to load up on the NHL side. Whereas in the East, not all, but a lot of the top contenders, their parent clubs are just about out of the playoff hunt. So they're really not that much of danger losing some of their top players. So it's an interesting dynamic there too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that could very well play a role in it too.
Especially too, I think there are some and those aren't as equal across places. Like Los Angeles is going to make the playoffs. The Kings are going to the playoffs. I'm sure you're probably aware.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing though, but that's interesting you bring that up because Ontario is about to get picked dry because they've had a huge wave of injuries as of late. I think they're down like 8 players now. So unless the Kings actually make a move at the deadline, Ontario might be calling some up from ECHL as well.
They will, but I think the Kings are unlikely to move one of those guys outside of just injury call-ups. And not as familiar with Los Angeles's injury situation. So like, I don't know if those guys are, hurt, or if it's like, oh, it'll be a 2-week thing. He tweaked the knee ligament or whatever. But like, I don't think LA moves any of their like young guys for rentals. I think they've overachieved this year based on what they thought they would do.
Sure.
But they're not going to try and do a sell the farm to win now thing. I think the LA brass is smarter than that. Whereas like Anaheim is doing Anaheim's out of the playoffs, but like, they're not selling anything. Whereas like Vegas could. Vegas is always in the business of anybody who's moving, we want to at least have a seat at the table for. I have no idea how they fit that a trade under their salary cap, but I said that last year about how Tampa got in, and they're like Vegas is already playing LTIR games with Mark Stone. So I don't think they move any of their important pieces, but like Calgary could.
Sure, they could.
I could see Calgary, sending someone, not Dustin Wolf, but like Connor Mackey might be on the table for them. It would shock me to see them move him for a piece, especially if they want Mark Giordano back. Like that's going to cost them roster players. Out east, like the Capitals aren't moving anyone, so that's not a concern. Seattle probably isn't, but Florida probably will. The Devils are out of the playoffs, and they're like, the other thing too is like, you have teams that are out of the playoffs that are going to be sellers. Like, who did I just have in mind that was going to be a seller? So like, let's say like if Lehigh Valley were realistically in a playoff, going to make a chance at the playoffs, they have none basically. But if they do, the Flyers are sellers at the deadline. So even if they don't lose anything that was important from that team, there are going to be roster spots open on the NHL club that are going to get filled by players from Lehigh Valley. So you have a lot of teams that are kind of in those weird spots where like, thankfully, Rochester doesn't have to worry about that, because if they had to send any more people to Buffalo, they'd be toast.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's kind of like the concern around here in Utica is like, well, geez, if the Devils are out of the playoffs, well, a lot of those guys are going to get their cup of tea, so to speak, in April. But it's like, don't worry, they'll be back for the playoffs. So
they'll be back. Your playoff seed, like I think we said on our show, it would require the team that was right below you in the standings. I think it was Laval. To win like 12 of their, or like win like 15 of their last 20, and Utica to not gain a single point.
Like lose out.
Yeah, Utica is like not mathematically locked into that division, but realistically, they're going to win the division. Like they could literally replace that entire team with, Utica College and be completely fine. Or sorry, Utica University now.
Yes,
They are now trouble. The W.
That's it. Yes, exactly. And that takes some getting used to. Let me tell you something.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, that's a good move for them too. It's things are looking so up for the Pioneers as well. But gee, Sean, I've had you on here for over an hour, so I appreciate you taking all the time to hang out with us. One quick question before you go. MVP candidates, who you got?
For me personally, that's a tough one. Like we on our award show, we don't do MVP because I think finding the valuable part is such an exercise in like mind pretzels of trying to figure out who the most valuable is. We just do best, but I understand most valuable is, an award. Like I think probably Tynan or Podorowski actually win it based on, the AHL's shadow government that votes on these awards at the end of the year. Because it's basically, I mean, like every year it's just like, all right, best defenseman is, all right, we go to defenseman and we sort by points, and number one, best, or the, Baz Aldrin Award for best goaltender is sort by wins, and maybe goals against average. Number one, that's our guy. For me, like, I think Matias Maccelli should be in the conversation in Tucson. Like, yes, Tucson is not a very good team, but that dude has carried that team to even like having a whisper of the Pacific Division playoffs. He like that power play runs even kind of efficiently because he makes it so. Like that dude has carried that team kicking and screaming to even half of as good as they are. I think Rocco Grimaldi from Milwaukee should be someone that ends up on, ballots.
Yeah,
like
blast from the past.
He has been fantastic for Milwaukee this year, but he's not going to put up, the point totals because he didn't play. He only got to Milwaukee in like, I want to say November or December, but like he has been a pivotal part of Milwaukee turning around from being a garbage fire in, late October and early November to being a genuine playoff contender this time. Like that's been a lot of Rocco Grimaldi. I also think goaltender should be a bigger part of the MVP conversation. Calvin Pickard has carried Grand Rapids kicking and screaming to contention this year. Connor Ingram in Milwaukee, the same. I think Sheldon Dries is he's been the one constant on that Abbotsford roster that has turned over, 9 guys in their top 9 to Vancouver for stints. He's been the only one there pretty much manning the ship the entire time. And he's been fantastic this year, but it's probably going to end up being either TJ Tynan or Paul Dorowski or maybe Martin Firk or someone like that. I think other guys should get consideration. That's not to diminish what Tynan's done this year or Paul Dorowski.
No.
They've been super fantastic, but I struggle with giving them an MVP award just because I think all right, if you take TJ Tynan off of Ontario, what is Ontario? Still probably very good. If you take Paul Dorowski off Chicago, what is Chicago? Still probably very good. Do they make a good team much, much better? Yeah, of course they do. But I think there are people who have other cases like Rocco Grimaldi where it's you take him off that team and they may not be a playoff team because they certainly weren't before he got there. And they are now, and he has been driving the bus for that team. That is someone who I would have probably second on my ballot, but should I get for our award show, he'll probably be second or third on my ballot, but I would be surprised if he got any votes for from the actual AHL award, which is why you should watch our award show instead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do? We're going to put a link to your show right on our website because that's, like I said, I absolutely love you guys' show. It's fantastic. There it is right there for everybody who's watching on the YouTube channel. Absolutely. Yep. And I'm going to have Dave run that graphic across the bottom again for your analytical work because, like I said, anybody who's into analytics, you got to check this out. It's fantastic. But Sean, thanks so much for coming on. And once again, where are we we can find the Calder Farmstead on all major podcast platforms and YouTube, correct?
Oh yeah, you can find it. I mean, it's on 12 different platforms. I think I put it on all the popular ones. Your, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. We're on Amazon. I assume the rest of the podcatchers that are out there are just, stealing your information and selling it to, third world countries to sell you, products you don't want. But we're on those too, in case you use, Podbean or TuneIn or whatever. Hey, if that's your podcast thing, that's what you do. But we're on anyone on under the sun that I've ever heard of. We're on there. We're also on YouTube. If you just type in or if you just go into Google and type in the Calder Farmstead, you'll find us. It's pretty hard not to. Or our Linktree page is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. That has links to all of the places, all of our popular podcast catchers. So Spotify, Amazon, Apple, our YouTube channel. It has our social media, our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also has a link to my analytics page there. So if you go to our Linktree page there, that's where you can find basically anywhere we do anything. It's on there somewhere.
That is awesome. And you guys have a new episode every week, and it's such a fantastic show. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, like I said, we usually do the preview and recap, but we taken a 2-week break because I was in Pittsburgh last weekend and wasn't going to be able to watch games, and I'm planning on being rather drunk this weekend for St. Patty's. So
there you go.
Yeah, so we were like, well, we could probably half-ass one. I'm like, no, let's not do that. We did playoff, like a playoff primer, talking about the playoff races. And then this episode, we're going to play amateur GM for the AHL and see if we can't make some fun trades.
That's awesome, man. That is so awesome. Well, listen, thank you for coming on. And you know what? We're going to have to do this again sometime. This is just so much fun. Way too much fun.
The Comets are very clearly going places in the playoffs. So when that time comes, we absolutely should hook back up and we'll talk about, break down some Comets playoff series for you.
Beautiful. It sounds like a plan, my friend.
Absolutely.
And again, appreciate it so much coming on tonight. Thank you for all your time. Like I said, we've been here for over an hour, and it seems like we've only been here for 15 minutes. So,
oh yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely, and enjoy your St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, it's a weekend event. We spend the entire day cooking Irish food, drinking, singing songs. It's a great time.
Awesome. That is awesome. And, maybe someday you have to put that on your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
I still have to be employable at the end of the day, so I don't know about that.
That is fantastic. All right. Well, again, like I said, thank you so much, and we will definitely have you back on as soon as we get towards the playoffs here.
All right. Sounds good, man.
All righty. Thank you for your time, Sean. Appreciate it.
No
That
worries.
is Sean O'Brien from the Calder Farmstead at an AHL podcast. That is so much fun. So much fun, man. We great guest. And I'm telling you, Dave, if you want to know anything about the AHL, that's the podcast to listen to.
He was pretty darn knowledgeable. I think he could get on another hour, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's there's no doubt about that. But I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? We're in a little bit different of a format since we don't have Dom and Jeremy here. Okay. But why don't we do this? Let's do breakaway trivia.
Okay.
All right. And then we'll do a commercial break, and then we'll come back up, wrap up with some news and notes from around hockey, and we'll call it a night. How's that?
That sounds good.
All right. So breakaway trivia. By the way, we were talking about the Balls Army earlier. Well,
Uh-oh.
breakaway trivia is brought to you by a couple of guys from the Balls Army. So first of all, we've got Epic DJ Service. That is Scott Schuster. His number is 315-219-3568 for all of your DJ needs. And I'm telling you right now, if you've ever been to the Adirondack Bank Center and heard him yelling out, "Who's out?" That's the guy you want for your DJ for weddings, whatever it is you got going on. I got to imagine, a balls out wedding. Imagine that.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
And the other member of the Balls Army, not just one, but one of the other ones, Josh Amodio. He owns Priceless Inspections. That's a home inspection service. You want to call 315-525-8725 if you need any kind of home inspection. Josh can hook you up. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the breakaway trivia. We're going to do a commercial, and then we'll do the answer when we come back. So this week's breakaway trivia question is, I'm going to keep it real simple, Dave, too.
Oh, good for me.
All I want to know is, who is the NHL's all-time leader in shorthanded goals? The answer when we come back.
Visit My Little Falls and stay connected with the latest news, information, and events in the city and the area. Our mission is to generate interest in the community and connect residents in a more meaningful way by facilitating deeper conversations about how these stories will shape the future of the Mohawk Valley. Join thousands of weekly visitors who stay up to date with feature stories, interviews, videos, our event calendar, and print publication, the Mohawk Valley Express. It's about timely local news for the community, keeping citizens informed about important issues, telling about the people who live and work here, and giving locally owned businesses the opportunity to reach a very targeted audience of locals and tourists alike. It's a whole new form of media-rich content developed specifically for today's mobile lifestyle and listeners. You can download our iOS app in the iTunes Store, listen to our country music streaming radio station, or sign up for a weekly newsletter. Stop by today at mylittlefalls.com. You'll be glad you did.
I got a question for you. Is there any way I can get that tune for like my wake up tone in the morning for my alarm clock?
You're going to set that.
Because if I had that, I would probably burst out of bed, run about 5 miles before I went to work. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
You're not 5 miles from work.
No. Yeah, well, that's true too.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get that answer. All right, but you know what, Dave? Just for you, I'm going to give you the question again. And all I want to know is, who is the all-time NHL leader in shorthanded goals? Any idea?
So you said you were making it easy for me. So that was a hint, right?
It was.
So I was going to say one of my key guys, like a Gretzky or somebody like that, right?
So yeah, pick one.
All right, Gretzky.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Wayne Gretzky was 73.
I was going to say Messier, but
He's second with 63.
Okay. How many did Gretzky have?
73.
Okay.
You should go to the casino tonight.
You said easy, and you know which names I always give out. So you played into my answers, what you did.
Exactly. See what kind of a good friend I am?
Yeah, you gave me a layup.
Exactly. Don't expect them every week. All right?
Yeah, no. I don't even know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, since we don't have Dom and Jeremy this week, this segment 2 is going to go pretty quick. But I do want to touch on a couple of things here. The second-ranked Utica Pioneers men's hockey team is playing in the quarterfinals of the NCAA Division III tournament this Saturday afternoon. They will be taking on the eighth-ranked Nor'easters of the University of New England. That is going to be a very good game. And, the thing is, Dave, around here, we don't see the Nor'easters too much, at least the team from the University of New England. We usually get a Nor'easter about every year. But,
right, yeah, a couple of times.
But, yeah, they're a very strong team that, nobody's going to be taken lightly. and they actually won their bid to get into this tournament with a thrilling 3-2. I think it was a double overtime victory over Plymouth State. So I can just rest assured that the Adirondack Bank Center at 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday is going to be rocking.
Yeah,
because that is going to be a full house for that game. It's going to be awesome. And if the Pioneers win, they advance to the semifinals, which is going to be in Lake Placid.
yeah. I hadn't heard the term puck luck before, so the Pioneers got good puck luck right now.
The Pioneers have good everything right now. So
say puck luck 3 times real fast.
yeah, just like Ukko-Pekka-Luukkonen, right?
That was a great story. His nickname was Rifle. I mean, that was like, I'm going, where's he going with this? Finland. Okay, I'm not getting this, but
yeah, it's amazing. You know what? I heard the episode that they were talking about that. I'm like, man, that is cool.
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
Just such a cool name to say. I can't help it.
No, I didn't. You didn't hear me say it. I just said Rifle.
Yeah, well, I'm saying Ukko-Pekka-Luukkonen.
I'm not even starting.
That should be some kind of like a password to get into a club.
I'm bound to piss somebody off by the way I pronounce it, so I'm just not going to go there.
Where's those speakeasies when you need them? What's the
really.
password? Ukko-Pekka-Luukkonen. All right, you're in.
All right. Yeah. Rifle.
Yeah.
Shoot him.
Exactly right. But yeah, anyways, good luck to our Pioneers. Like I said, I'm all the confidence in the world with them. They're playing the best hockey they played all season long, and that says a lot because they played excellent hockey all year. So
yeah,
good luck, Pioneers. Let's see. Next, the NHL trade deadline approaches. Monday is the trade deadline. I think 3:00 Eastern time it expires. So we've already had one trade. Josh Manson was traded by the Avalanche to the Ducks. Or I'm sorry, from the Ducks to the Avalanche, the other way around. I got to think about Ukko-Pekka-Luukkonen. He was traded for a prospect and a draft pick. But there are other dominoes to fall. And again, I was going to kind of bounce these off Dom and Jeremy, but I came up with 5 names. I was going to kind of spitball. And you know what? I'm going to make my predictions, and we'll see if I was actually right next week.
All right.
So
like, who's going to wait this long and play it back?
Yeah, well, maybe. You never know. It could be some
you never know.
Yeah. Right. Or I'll just have you edit it into the little clips again. Remember?
Yeah. Right.
There you go. You just made yourself more work.
No, please, no.
First of all, Claude Giroux, longtime Philadelphia Flyer. I actually think he ends up in Colorado. He is going to be what they need to complete that top 6, even really solidify that top 9. Colorado is a wagon as it is. And if they get Giroux, that's pretty much going to solidify their number 1 spot in the West. It's going to cost them a little bit, but as we heard from Sean, they've got pieces in their, the Colorado Eagles are their AHL team, and they've also got draft picks available. So, in Scott's opinion, expect to see Claude Giroux in Colorado. Up next, Ben Sherratt, defenseman from the Montreal Canadiens. He's been talked about. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, so he's really what they call a rental, meaning the team that trades for him really has him for like 2 or 3 months. Then they either have to re-sign him or let him go. Solid defenseman. He's not going to score a ton of points for you, but he's certainly going to lock down your defense. I think he ends up in Florida. Florida really just needs to round out that top 6 in their defense. And that team, to me, right now, is the favorite to come out of the East. If they do have one gaping hole, it's kind of a lack of depth on defense. So that's my pick. Sherratt to Florida. All right, moving right along. Jacob Chychrun, the defenseman from Arizona. He's been the talk of the league for basically all year, given the, at the risk of sounding mean, the dumpster fire that Arizona has become. He is their most marketable trade piece. He's a fantastic young defenseman on a very friendly contract, 3 years left at $4.6 million per season, which in NHL terms is a fantastic contract, given the salary cap. Arizona wants a king's ransom for him, though. They want 3 or 4 pieces. Basically what the Sabres wanted for Jack Eichel. I'm not so sure he gets traded by the trade deadline this year. I think this is more of an offseason trade, and I think he goes to the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings have a loaded prospect pool and have a glaring need to have Chychrun, so it just seems like it's just almost too perfect not to happen. Again, whether it happens at the trade deadline or in the offseason, kind of hard to say, but I think Chychrun goes to LA. Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, this is where I really wish Dom and Jeremy were here, because I'm going to blow their minds when they hear this, right?
Uh-oh.
So everybody was talking about Marc-Andre Fleury, goaltender for the Chicago Blackhawks, possibly going to Toronto. even though he's been kind of lukewarm to that idea. He does have a no trade clause. You know where I think he would actually end up, and it would make all the sense in the world? The Rangers. Okay, hear me out, right?
You would have them go berserk.
I know, right? It would be awesome, but just hear me out, because Igor Shesterkin, their starting goaltender, is a fantastic goaltender, and he is an obvious candidate for the Hart Trophy as league MVP. However, if something should happen to him, the Rangers' northern fan base are very high on Alexander Georgiev, who's his backup. Who better to back up Shesterkin and maybe give him a little bit of rest down the stretch than a proven winner like Marc-Andre Fleury? Now, Chicago wants a first-round draft pick back for him, but the Rangers are looking to get rid of Vitaly Kravtsov, and they've got picks available.
How old is Fleury?
Fleury is 36, I believe.
So he could use a little rest time.
He could use a little rest time, and you know what? Like I said, it's the perfect match as far as I'm concerned. And if you're the Rangers and you're going to go for it this season,
right?
Who better to solidify your goaltending?
Boy, that'd be a good move. That's interesting.
Yeah. Now we'll just see what they think.
Yeah. Did you pick that up off the bottom of your shoe or what?
Well, I'm not going to reveal my sources.
Yeah.
And my last one is, of course, just because I love the guy, Phil Kessel. Arizona Coyotes right winger. He's going to be looking for a new home. He needs to get out of Arizona, get a change of scenery. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I think he ends up in Boston. Boston could use some more scoring. Originally a Boston Bruins draft pick. And to me, why not, right? If you're going to go home.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So that's all I've got for my trade deadline predictions. Let's see if they come true next week.
I tell you what, you need to bring it up next week. And
I will.
Just at the beginning, just tell us how good you were or how bad.
Well, it depends on how good I was or how bad I was, whether I do bring it up. So
yeah, true. We may never hear about this again.
No, well, we probably won't. But
yeah.
One last news item, and you'll be of interest to this one, Dave. So last but not least, Jack Eichel had a rough return to Buffalo. He lost in his return as a member of the Golden Knights. He had some choice words after the game.
I thought you were saying Eichel was going to the Kings.
No.
I thought, no, you're not saying that, are you?
No, not at all. Amongst other things, he said something effective. So they must be booing me because they wish I was still here. And he said something about, well, it took him 7 years to get the building going and all this, basically bitter. As a Sabres fan, how do you feel about that?
I don't feel anything. I'm numb.
I didn't think so. But you know what? If I was a Sabres fan, I would be like, well, good riddance.
Yeah.
This is, good riddance. So anyways, I think that's going to wrap things up there, Dave the Save.
You think so?
I think so. I think I've said enough for this week.
Yeah, I hear music.
Oh yeah. I don't, but that's
well, I can make it louder.
There you go, right? So that's all we got. Like I said, thank you to Sean O'Brien from the Calder Farmstead and AHL Podcast. Check that out anywhere you can find podcasts anywhere, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. Also check out his analytical work. We'll have the link up on our website, which is martyslegalstick.com. And you can also check that out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. So anyways, for Dave the Save Warner, I'm Scott Kinville. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week on Marty's Legal Stick Hockey Podcast.